Hey guys, welcome back to my channel Sockets and Sideburns. Today we're going to be going over the removal, inspection and testing of the coil pack on the Mark II Renault Clios with the 1.2 16 valve petrol engine in. Now I know that coil pack failures are a common issue on this engine, but I've seen the coil packs replaced just as many times when they weren't the cause of the fault as when they were the cause. And at 30 to 40 pounds a pop, they aren't cheap, so it's worth taking the time to verify that they are the cause of the problem. I'm going to go through replacement, which is really very easy on these. Also show you how to resistance test the coil pack with a multimeter. I'll also go over a list of things to look out for when you visually inspect the coil pack, but this list is by no means complete. When ordering a new coil pack, there are two types, one with 4 bolts and one with 3. On the engine in here, the D4F722, it's the one with 4 bolts, but do be sure to check yours before ordering. Also, unfortunately on these coils, you can't separate the HT leads from the coil pack itself. So if your fault lies with either the HT leads or the coil, you'll have to buy the whole unit. Right, let's pop the bonnet and get to it. Firstly, we need to disconnect the battery negative cable, slacken off this 8mm and put the cable somewhere where it can't flop back and make contact with the negative terminal. Right, the coil pack on these is living down here at the back of the engine. All our HT leads are hidden under the airbox, so we need to get that out the way. Pull off this PCV hose and then a 7mm to slacken off this Jubilee clip. Then the airbox is just held on by 3 pins going into rubber mounts here, here and here. So just get your hands underneath it, lift straight up and then wiggle it off the throttle body. Then you can just set it up on top of the battery. Before you remove the HT leads from their cylinders, it'll help with resistance testing later and also with refitting the leads in the right cylinders if you end up reusing this coil. If you get some electrical tape and wrap it around each lead and then label them 1 to 4, remembering that number 1 is at the flywheel end of the engine on this engine. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we can pull each HT lead off of its spark. Make sure you pull it up by the solid plastic part and not the wire itself, as you may fracture the connection in here. Unclip all the wire from its clips on the engine and then pull straight up and out, and repeat that for each lead. Also make sure that on each HT lead tube, the rubber boots inside the HT lead come out off of the spark plugs. If they don't, you're going to have to get down into the cylinder with a long pick or something to fish them out. Now we can remove the coil pack itself. Just take off this PCV hose and rotate it back to improve access. Rotate it back like that. Now we'll remove this wiring connector. Just pull this tab up and then pull the plug out by the plug, not by the wires. Like that. Lastly, it's held in place by these 4 T30 bolts that you can see, 1 in each corner. Whip these out. Okay, with those 4 bolts out, just take our coil pack off now. Pull off this vacuum line here, it's for the brake servo. Just depress these 2 tabs, one at the top and one at the bottom. Just squeeze them and that will pull out and make it easier to pass your HT leads back through. Now we can take this over to the bench for inspection and testing. Right, with the coil pack on the bench, we can give it a resistance test as well as a proper visual inspection. We'll start off with the coil pack body, just looking for any obvious signs of damage, like burning or any cracks in it. Pay particular attention to the HT lead exit areas here, as if there's any damage here, it's going to allow the ignition voltage to jump to the lead next to it or straight to earth. Then have a look at your wiring pins in the connector here. Make sure that they're undamaged and free of any corrosion. Then we'll want to start working our way down each HT lead one at a time. Just check it over for any signs of water being on it, or if it's dirty, it may allow the ignition voltage to track to an earth. Also check them over for any signs of burning or splits, cracking, anything like that in the insulation. Pay particular attention to where they're clipped to the engine, as this would be a prime place for the insulation to wear through. Check each one all the way down. Just bend them ever so slightly, just so you can reveal any hidden splits that may be in them. And give each one a thorough checking over, as any splits in these is going to allow that ignition voltage to ground on the engine somewhere. Then look over the HT lead tubes for any signs of spark arcing. This is going to show up as a little pin-sized burn hole in the tube itself, which is where the spark is arcing to the outside. This is usually going to be caused by something like water or oil in the spark plug well. This is another thing you should be checking for on the engine itself. If you do have this problem, then you're going to want to fix the underlying cause of that moisture ingress into the spark plug well before you change the coil pack. Lastly, a look down inside the lead ends themselves to see the connector, looking for any damage or corrosion. Remove the rubber boots to get a really good look down inside. We're going to need them out anyway to test the resistances in a minute. So with these, all you got to do, just get a screwdriver and pop this little lug up, and the same here. And then you should just be able to pull the boot out like that. Then we can have a good look down inside for any signs of corrosion or damage in there. Repeat that on all 4 of them. Next up, we can test the resistances of the coil pack itself. Set your multimeter to ohms, and on the range, make sure that you've got it set to just ohms if it's not got an auto setting like mine has here. And we're going to be checking the resistances across these pins on the connector. Now you can see the pins are marked A, B, C and D on the original Renault coil packs. If yours aren't marked, like this one here isn't, for instance, because it's an aftermarket part, then with the tab at the bottom, it's A, B, C, D, left to right. Now, before you test the primary coil, make sure your test leads are good and you find out the resistance of them. You'll have to subtract that figure from your readings. So in our case, we've got 0.1 to 0.2 ohms of resistance already in the leads. Okay, across pin A and B, the reading should be 0.4 ohms plus minus 0.02. So that's a reading of 0.38 ohms to 0.42 ohms. And don't forget to subtract your lead resistance from that. So across R's, on A and B, we've got 0.5 ohms. So if we take off our lead resistance, that gives us 0.4. Now test pin C to D, which should also be 0.38 to 0.42 ohms. And again, we've got 0.5 ohms. Next across pin B and C, these should be 0 ohms plus minus 0.02 ohms. We've got 0.1, so when we subtract our lead resistance, it's 0. Now to check the secondary windings, and since we can't remove the HT leads from the coil pack, our resistance values are going to include them as well. We need to get our test lead down onto the connector inside the HT lead tube. That's why I said it's easiest to remove the rubber boot out of these. The readings for these are going to be in kilo ohms, so if your meter isn't auto ranging, be sure to adjust it now to the kilo ohms range. So, leads 1 to 4, and you can see why I said to mark them up when they're on the car, because it's going to make it really easy to see which ones we're testing now. Leads 1 to 4 should read 9.8 kilo ohms plus minus 0.5 kilo ohms. So we'll get our leads down inside. And we've got 9.97, which is in spec. And leads 2 to 3. 2, 3. And these should be 9.6 kilo ohms plus minus 0.5 kilo ohms again. Get your probes on the connectors inside. And we've got 9.69 kilo ohms, so well within spec again. Lastly, check leads 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 2 to 4, and 3 to 4. The resistance on these must be infinite, so that's going to read as OL, or open loop, on your meter. 1 to 2, open loop. 1 to 3, open loop. 2 to 4, open loop, and 3 to 4, open loop. Now, if any of these readings are out of spec, then the coil pack or the leads has a fault and you should replace it. Obviously, if you saw any damage on the coil pack itself, leads or connectors, that would be a reason to replace the coil pack as well. If you're going to be refitting your old coil, remember to put your rubber boots back in again. They just need to be pushed back in to press your lug just to get it past on both sides. And then repeat for all four. Obviously don't bother if you're getting a new coil. If you are replacing your coil though, keep your old rubber boots and don't throw them away, as these do split sometimes, and it would be a shame to need to get a whole new coil just because you needed one of these boots. So keep them handy. Okay, refitting is basically the reverse of removal. Get your HT leads under this hose. And back over the engine. And then put the coil pack back down into its mounting area. It's only going to bolt up one way because of the bolt pattern. Okay, put these 4 T30s back in, finger tight to start with. At least until we've got them all started. Then just pinch them up with a 3/8 ratchet. Don't go crazy because the coil is just plastic. Wiring connector back in. Just make sure the weather pack, that's this seal, this blue seal around it, isn't split or folded over. Just push it back into the connector till you hear that click. If you're refitting your old coil, you'll have marked the old leads so you know where they go. However, if it's a new coil, look for any identifiers on the leads. I know that the Renault coil packs have dots where the leads exit the coil to identify cylinders. Failing that, lead number 1 should be significantly longer than lead number 4, so it should be pretty much impossible to muddle them up. Also, on all the coil packs I've seen, it's been cylinder 4 on the cam belt end closest to the wiring plug, then just right to left counting down to cylinder 1. So 4, 3, 2, 1, left to right from the wiring plug. Okay, now you've identified which leads are going to which cylinders. Clip them into this holder on the back of the engine, just so you don't get them muddled back up again at any point. And then refit this brake vacuum line. It goes over the top of the PCV hose and coil leads 2 and 1. And it just clips back in, just push it back in there. And then rotate this PCV hose back up and push that back on as well. Before we fit our HT leads back onto the sparks, it's a good idea to put some silicone dielectric grease on the rubber boots to help seal out moisture, prevent arcing, and help stop the rubber sticking to the porcelain on the plugs, hopefully. Okay, we'll push the HT leads back onto the spark plugs in the right order. Push down and listen out for that click. clip the wires down as we go. Airbox back on. Make sure the seal that goes around the throttle body is in here, not displaced or twisted. Just wiggle the airbox back onto the throttle body. Line up your 3 pins with the mounts and push down. Push the PCV hose back on. And then do up the Jubilee clip that holds the box onto the throttle body. Just make sure you get this cut out in the Jubilee clip over the tab on the airbox. Okay, negative battery cable back on. 8mm. Drop the bonnet, and we're finished. Right guys, that's the job done. And remember, I'm always around in the comments section to help answer any questions you might have about diagnosing these, so please leave a comment and I'll always try and get back to you to help you with your fault. Remember to like this video if you've enjoyed it or it's helped you out. Subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more videos in the future. You can find me over on Instagram @SocketsAndSideburns. Thanks for watching guys, I'll see you in the next video.